left, and when the red light flashes, you stop talking, unless a justice asks you a question.
Thank you very much, respectful panel. On this issue, it's just, let me think. Would you want to hear about the, me driving, or would you want to hear about not having access to the courts?
You may use the time any way you think would be most helpful. I can assure you that we have read your submissions,
Right.
so
Okay.
you can
So-
assume that. So
Right.
whichever way you would like to use
Well,
the
in 10
time.
minutes, I can probably just go through I got a call from my friend. She was having trouble at with her home, so I went, she wanted me to go get her a sub and go there. So, the whole issue with this is your phone being wiretapped up, about all that kind of extra abuse of power. And, I just got in my old antique Oldsmobile that I just bought, and I went down 495. I called her, told her exactly where I was. I went around to get on the Lowell connector. There was no police in sight, and I just went normally down the Lowell connector at a regular ongoing speed. And when I came up over the little overpass to where Sears used to be, the Plain Street exit, the traffic was backed up on the highway. So I went around the traffic, which was nothing. It was on the highway. I had to go around the lane. So that was basically any kind of lane change they're talking about. So I just got past, where the road would be over the bridge, and I was pulled over. Right away, pulled over, stopped, took my keys out, put them up on the dashboard, put my hands right on the steering wheel, stood very straight and respectful. And then he charged me with all these things. And so I basically wanted to contest it. So, and there was things on it like radical drive and all kinds of stuff. That was kind of, and I actually called them and said, that was kind of, gave them my opinion of their little comments. But, so then it was time to go to court, and I didn't get a letter. And I happened to be stopped weeks before that I didn't turn my lights on when I was leaving the gas station from work, going through Concord, getting gas, going back home. And so I called about both issues. I called both courts the same day. And all of a sudden, they're saying, this is like the Lowell case was way out of range where you expect to get the papers in, from the registry when you should go to court, or from the court. I found out the court sends it to. I call the registry, they say call the courts. So the same day, like 3 or 4 days later, I get papers from the Lowell court and the Concord court on when to come to court. So I had these papers. It wasn't in a printout form from the computer. It was in a letter form typed right up on the computer. So when I went to the Lowell case, they told me it was yesterday. And then right away, they write on me, but if you have your paper, we can give you another day. And right then, I've seen a lot of things where people went into my home.
Did you have the piece of paper?
Well, that was the whole point. Once they said that, I already knew that, my home is like an open door to the world. Okay, there's many issues and there's facts where court papers in the federal level were stolen out of my home. Somebody went in, deleted the whole computer where, I'm not computer literate, so I couldn't, hit that circle button, which I've been educated now on. I might have been able to retrieve some of it, but I didn't know how to get it back, so I filed it in the court and just told them what happened, that someone came into my home and wrecked all my court papers for my filings for the federal level. So once they said that, I basically knew that my paper would not be at my house. And I asked, to be reheard, and they're saying, well, if you find the paper. And I basically knew I wouldn't find it. But I did go home, no lie, went home, went through everything in my house. Didn't find either paper for the Concord or the Lowell. So, I knew that, I've already went through an experience before where they got my license. And I don't drink, so it wasn't, anything where you should lose your license for 4 years or something. But if you get like 7 things, you start losing it, and it causes issues. So I didn't want to go through that again. So, I went to a very honorable man, Mr. Day. I went to him. I went to the Cambridge court, and I ran into Mr. Day.
Matt Day in the Superior Court?
Exactly, and he was very, he helped me. He pulled out the manual, the laws, the rules, and he came up with a law and said, right here, you can go by this, and you can pay $20 and go in front of the judge. And to me, that was acceptable. Not that I had the money, and not that, I was dealing with quite a bit. I basically had to ride my bicycle from Groton to Cambridge, which was a 10-speed bike my friend's kids gave me that was not for a man. It was quite a trip, but I did it. And so I go, and then me and Mr. Day had that conversation, and he actually even called the courts, and they said everything's okay. And so I went back to Lowell, with money I didn't have. And and then I get to Lowell, and they're saying, no, we're still not going to give you a hearing. So now it's like, so I went, up the level to now I want to talk to who's in charge, since I went through all that. And he was, I'm not sure of the name, but he came out and said, we're still not going to let you have it heard. So that's what brought me into the serviture where I had to come to the Superior Court, and, I went back to Middlesex and I filed all the papers, and the state helped me by paying for it because of, the money issue. And, I went in front of the judge, and, he basically was trying to help me. Him and Mr. Brennan, they both were trying to help me, and I wasn't very educated on this lawyer stuff at the time. So, then they wanted me to go and rewrite the complaint because of the Concord issue. I brought that up because what happened in Concord, as soon as that Lowell issue happened, I called Concord directly, and they said, yep, your date is definitely this date. I went to Concord on the seatbelt thing or something, and they said it was yesterday, too. They did the same thing to me. But on this document, they whited out the date. So to me, that was evidence, which I tried to get here for the courts, which, I'm sure you know. So, once that happened, the judge really seemed like he wanted to help Mr. Honorable Judge there in Superior Court.
Fishman.
Right. And, he tried to explain to the state, and they just didn't want to let me, be heard in front of the judge. All I wanted to do was go in front of the Lowell, district court judge like Mr. Walker or someone like that, Judge Walker. And the court just didn't want to let me, the state, I mean. So I ended up losing, so, I learned and I followed the appeals, which is very good that we have you people, most respect. And here it stands. And there was one other issue I wanted to speak about, which was a piece of paper. Like when I came in and sat behind Jennifer, right? I sat here, and Jennifer comes in and sits here and drops a piece of paper, like right in front of my feet. And so, respectfully, I went and picked it up. But the way she handled that piece of paper in these days make me very questionable about the issue, where she took it and, she had a stack of papers, but she only took that one that she dropped and put it so nicely in her briefcase. So my fingerprints are on that, so I have to question what, was on that paper, just for it to be heard, so it will never come back and haunt me, we'll say. So besides all that, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mellen.
Thank you.
Ms. Cartier, do you wish to add anything?
Your Honor, as you know, we didn't file a brief in this case. I'm here to answer any questions the court might have.
Well, I have one question. I assume that if the court sends out a notice for a hearing, that it has a copy of the notice somewhere retained in its own records.
The Lowell District Court, yes.
And so was that ever discovered or presented in this case at any level?
It was not. The initial hearing in this matter came about, there was a status hearing by the court on May 5th, and at that hearing, I suggested that Mr. Mellens sought relief in terms of a stay of the suspension of his license, that therefore the defendant in the case at Superior Court was the wrong defendant, that we needed the RMV in the courtroom, since the only requested relief was the stay of the license suspension, pending a rehearing before the district court. We do have an administrative record that the Lowell District Court provided to the court, which included a letter from the clerk's office regarding how the hearing was called, as well as the docket sheet of the date it was called.
Is there something that's dated March 2nd, or that, I mean, it
Yes.
says the hearing is going to be on March 2nd?
There is not the notice itself, Your Honor. There is the date.
It's
that
the docket.
The docket date that it was called, and the finding that Mr. Mellen had failed to appear at that time.
And why wouldn't you have, why wouldn't the Lowell District Court have a copy of the actual notice that went out?
The letter recites that they do have a copy, but that wasn't provided as part of the administrative record in this case. That they relied on the docket, and the relief Mr. Mellen was seeking at that time was against the Registry of Motor Vehicles.
Thank you, Ms. Conte.
Thank you, Your Honor.